You will no longer hear beeps until someone else mode.
Good morning for those who have already joined us. I'm your host, Victoria McLean, and welcome. We will wait another few more minutes for everyone to join, and we will begin at 10:30. Welcome, everyone. This is Victoria McLean, your host, and thank you for joining our webinar this morning. At this time, I would like to remind everyone to keep your phone on mute. We have reserved 10 minutes at the end of the session for Q&A. Should you have any questions during this presentation, please send them through the Questions tab on the right side of your screen. Our speaker will address them at the end of this presentation. Prosoft is pleased to offer a new webinar showcasing SAP BOBJ 4.0 upgrade. Listed are the upcoming webinars. Please stay tuned for future invitations. We certainly look forward to your continued participation. We have also listed webinars that we have already presented. If you'd like to receive a recorded copy, please send an email request and we will be more than happy to forward that accordingly. For those of you who are not familiar with Prosoft, Prosoft is a premium consulting company providing a wide variety of services in the SAP and enterprise integration platforms. This webinar is presented by Kiran Sivaganari. Siva is a practice lead at Prosoft for the SAP BOBJ Solutions Group. And this morning's agenda will be covering reasons to upgrade, BOE XI 3.1 versus SAP BI 4.0, complete upgrade versus staged upgrade, lessons learned, and then the conclusion. And now let me introduce to you Kiran. Kiran?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Before we get to the main point of the lessons learned during our upgrade from 3.1 to 4.0, let me give you the reasons why we want to upgrade from 3.1 to 4.0, then the main changes in terms of tools, the installation, and the parameters, and then we would discuss about the upgrade process. Do you want to go with the complete upgrade or the stage upgrade? And finally, we'll get to the point of lessons learned. The new features, I would like to discuss the three main features. The first one is SAP integration. You might already know that with 4.0, SAP Integration Kit is now included with 4.0. And also there are some more features. You can directly access the BEX queries through BICS connectivity. You can build your WebE, even Crystal reports through BICS connectivity. You don't have to go through universes. The next is the SSO setup is made easier. However, we found that Windows AD configuration was still challenging. The next feature is information design tool. This is a new tool introduced in 4.0. Using information design tool, you can create multi-source universes from multiple relational data sources. If you have multiple SQL servers or a combination of SQL Server, Oracle, or any such relational data sources, you can convert, you can create a single universe, and you can also build dimensional universes that support OLAP dimensions and hierarchies. We've also found that it is easy to manage the repository objects. You can also create security, row-level security for the universe data as well as for the metadata. The third is we found that it's easy to understand the tools. It is an enhanced user interface. Crystal Reports Designer, Crystal Reports Enterprise, and WebE. If you see the tools, they look more the same, and that would give a harmonized user interface. BI Launchpad, formerly known as InfoView, is a vast improvement. We have 5 different modules by default in that. You can see your most recent run reports. You can see your alerts right on the landing page. You can create custom modules as well. You can see the applications. You can directly launch applications, Explorer or BEX or WebE or Crystal Enterprise right from InfoView, Launchpad. And also the Dashboard Designer, formerly known as Excelsius 2008. There have been a lot of new components, as well as the connectivity has been improved. Coming to the the comparison between the previous version and 4.0, you already are familiar, yes. Then there are name changes. The most important is SAP Business Objects Enterprise is now called Business Objects Business Intelligence Platform. The other difference is Excelsius Designer is called Dashboard Design. A new tool has been added, SAP Business Objects Analysis Edition for Microsoft, which is a plugin for your Microsoft Office suite. And the formerly known Pioneer Voyager is now called Business Objects Analysis Edition for OLAP. Going further, InfoView, as I mentioned earlier, is called BI Launchpad, Dashboard Builder BI Workspaces, Crystal Reports Desktop Client Tool. The previous version as 2008 is now 2011, and 2011 will be the final desktop client tool. And as a replacement, they've introduced SAP Crystal Reports for Enterprise, and through which you can use BICS connectivity. And formerly in 2001, we were able to use MDX connections, which was a lot slower. And then other new tool, as I mentioned earlier, is Information Design Tool. Import Wizard is now Upgrade Management Tool. Coming to the installation and file system itself, security and authentication settings are not upgradable. You have to manually upgrade that in 4.0. You have to manually configure that in 4.0. Reporting databases connectivity, BOE server configuration is a little different than previous versions, and it has to be set up manually. It is not upgradable. And InfoView customization is not upgradable as well. And your custom Java code using BOE SDK and Report Engine SDK needs to be validated before it be used in 4.0. Tools, the most important is the Crystal Reports. As I mentioned earlier, 2011 will be the final version for the desktop tool, and you will have Crystal Reports Enterprise instead. All reports previously developed in 2008, previous versions, are upgradable to 2001. However, we found instances where we got a generic error as item 1 not found. Then desktop intelligence, as you already know, it's that the product has been retired, and all your previous DESKey reports are upgradable to web intelligence reports. However, some of the features did not work, and some of the reports were not upgradable. The details are available in SAP guides. Explorer, Business Objects Explorer. In the previous versions, we had UNV universes, which are not supported. Now the latest universe is with the .unx format. The previous universes have to be upgraded to the UNX format before you use Explorer. However, information spaces based on Excel are upgraded. Voyager Analysis Edition for OLAP. Some of the workspaces will be upgraded and some need manual changes. Webby, we found that there are new features, but we found many Java-related issues, but all the components, all the Webby documents were properly upgradable. And for Web Intelligence Software Development Kit, there is no software development kit support as of now. It will be available in the later releases. And finally, the tools. Lifecycle Manager is now integrated into 4.0. There is no separate installation or separate box maintenance for transporting your content from through the landscape. Report conversion is available to online mode. However, that will be available in the future releases, and it is now recommended that you upgrade from your production environment to development or queue, test it thoroughly, and then move it to the production environment. Translation Manager, it is now part of the BI client tools. You can run your reports, your dashboards or consoles through Translation Manager and have that integrated into the reports itself. wdeploy, which is a deployment tool for your web applications, is now integrated into 4.0, and a GUI version is available. Import Wizard is now called Upgrade Management Tool. This is a new tool compared to Import Wizard. Upgrade Management Tool also checks the dependencies of the objects. Now, the next part is how do you want to upgrade? Do you want to go for a complete upgrade or a staged upgrade? Well, If you have a previous version than XI 3.1 or 3.0 or XIR2, it is recommended to upgrade those reports or content to XIR2 or 3.1 before going to 4.0. You can use upgrade management tool to upgrade your content then to 4.0. If you have any reports, which DESKI reports, it is recommended to upgrade to 3.1 using the upgrade import wizard, and then use the report conversion tool, which is available in 4.0 to transport that to 4.0. Now, also when you are planning for an upgrade, I would recommend using a stage upgrade process. Thereby, you can either go from content to content, first upgrade your Webby reports, or upgrade your Crystal reports, upgrade your Excelsius dashboards, and then test it thoroughly, and then move to the next component. Or you can do it by department-wise. First, upgrade your finance department related reports, then go for the next HR or whatever you may have. And finally, the part why we have this webinar is for the lessons learned. We found during the installation there are many issues until we had Service Pack 2. Service Pack 4 is more of a stable release, in my opinion. BO 4.0 is very resource intensive, and we found that the recommended infrastructure by SAP is more of a not enough, and we had to upgrade it later. Webby visualizations did not install in the first time. We had to manually reinstall it again, run the installer, or in some cases we had to repair the installation from control panel. In one instance, the central management, the CMS database was not installed properly, and as a result, we were not able to log in, or we had other issues. A complete reinstall was necessary to create that database manually. It is also, so what we've learned from that is either we would install the database beforehand, SQL Server or Oracle or whatever you may have, or have an existing database, create a new CMS and audit databases for it, and have that configured before installing 4.0, so that you will configure the databases during the installation. As for the upgrade is concerned, if you have the latest service pack is Service Pack 5. What we've noticed is that when we were upgrading from Service Pack 2 to a further patch, Service Patch 3 or 4, we had a lot of issues. Some of the files were not installed. If you check the logs, you would see that missing components. And if in some instances when we reran the installer, it worked, and in other instances we had to roll back to the previous version and install the service pack. Also, while installation, we also noticed that the resources were completely consumed, and we checked and found that the Java processes were completely logged, and we had to manually stop the Java processes by going to the task manager and finding the location of that Java process where it is running from. So if you encounter this, I would recommend having to stop all the servers except for CMS and input and output repository file servers, and then rerunning the installer. Configuration and setup. As I already mentioned, we found that the resources, the infrastructure recommended by SAP was not sufficient in most of the cases. So I would recommend having a separate install, especially a separate system, especially for production, with a minimum RAM of 24 GB. And also we had issues with virtual machines. The next is You already know that Lifecycle Manager is now part of BI 4.0 and no separate installation is required. Also, when there were issues with Webby or when we were upgrading Crystal reports from previous release to 4.0, some of the reports were not completely upgraded. We had issues, as I mentioned earlier. Item 1 not found was one of the common errors we've seen. In that case, what we did was to stop the adaptive processing server, disable it, create a new adaptive processing server, and then try it again, and it worked. And also for the sizing of the server, the heap size was not enough, and I would recommend to have a minimum of 1 GB, the maximum depending on your RAM. And also we've noticed that most of the servers which were separate in previous releases were combined. Some of the servers were combined into adaptive processing server, and depending on your load, I would recommend to separate those servers and create new servers. For example, there is a server called DSL, a process called DSL, which is a dynamic semantic layer which processes your Webby reports. So I would recommend to have that separated from adaptive processing server, create a new server with a connection service as adaptive connection service and category as connectivity services, and have only DSL running in it. We also, as I mentioned earlier, SSO setup was better compared to the previous versions, but for SAP and other, Windows AD configuration was similar. Also, when configuring Windows AD, I would recommend to follow the guide exactly in the same sequence of orders as creating the service profile name and then coming back to BOE and configuring there. And also note that while running the commands or giving the service profile name, make sure that the case is the text is in the same case as what you created. Other lessons learned, what we've also noticed is error messages, which we've noticed in the previous versions were mostly generic and it did not give an exact reason. We've noticed that there are still a lot of generic errors, especially in Webby, which are Java related, during the universe generation when we use BICS connectivity. And when it comes to the application server, Tomcat 6.0, it does not always stop when you stop it from the central configuration manager, which is a known issue, which is bound to be fixed in the future releases. So as a workaround, we would stop that from the task manager or from the operating system. Adaptive processing server, as I mentioned earlier, where some of the services was bundled, and it is recommended to have split the servers, at least in the production environment. Architecture support, it is recommended to split the architectures into separate servers. I would suggest application servers, your web application servers, and your backend, your database is sitting on 3 different systems, or you can have you could have different servers, or you could run through a load balancer. Also, the setting of system variables, as I mentioned earlier, it is not upgradable from 3.1 to 4.0. You have to manually set up those system variables in 4.0, and the file system has been changed. Previously, we had web.xml or the XML files as a property where you set the properties for the Launchpad or the CMC or any servers, but in 4.0, it has been changed to .properties file, and I would recommend having to look at the SAP guides before making any changes to those files. Also, if you have any service profile names for Windows AD or any username IDs created for entitlement systems of SAP, I would recommend to use different accounts. Create those different accounts and use that in 4.0. Some of the issues we faced during our upgrade process, these are all related these were all the issues we faced after the upgrade, um, either when we were running the reports or in the server or things which we found. One issue we faced was with Webby report having 3 different BEX queries. This previously we had only universes to connect to Webby. In 4.0 we can directly connect the BEX queries as a source using BICS connectivity uh, to develop the Webby reports. We noticed when we used different Webby report BEX queries, um, more than one BEX query in a single Webby report, that um, it did not always run in Launchpad or CMC or through your end portal. In our case, we had NetWeaver portal, but it ran successfully in Rich Client. So we haven't found a solution for that yet, and it's open with SAP. The other issue we noticed is with Crystal Reports 2011, as I mentioned earlier, it does not always update, or it does not always, you cannot always upgrade your previous reports to the current version. As I mentioned earlier, item 1 not found was the most common error we faced in that. Also, in Crystal Reports 2011, when we are upgrading, we used MDX drivers to connect to a BEX query and build a report. So when you have multiple queries in your development system with different names, with same description but a different technical name, when we had to point from one report to another with the same description but a different technical name, it did not always update that. So what we did was edit the name of the report in the database export of Crystal Reports. Edit the name of in the description mode and manually change it. Or you can go to the technical name and manually enter the technical name and hit enter, and then it would recognize the new source of the report. The other issue we faced is it does not always update the parameters, even though it says that when you point to a new source from one BEX query to another BEX query, when you point to a new source, even when you update it, even if the message says the source has changed and do you want to continue, it still did not update the variables if it was the same name. Let's say you've changed the variable in BEX query, saying that if you use the same variable but change the type, instead of having a single date to a date range, when you come back to Crystal Reports and update it, it does not always update it. So follow the same procedure, set the data source location and point to the same query again. Other issue we face with Crystal Reports is that in CMC, if you have a report scheduled in CMC, and if you do not want that instance to be run, if you further realize that you do not want to run that schedule that report, if you delete that report, if you delete that scheduled instance, even the report is deleted. So what we would suggest if you face that kind of situation is to pause the instance and just stop the instance and continue using the report, and do not delete the report itself, instance itself. Webby report generation was very consistent, and we were using BICS connectivity to a BEX query, and SAP is aware that you would see it's not just with Webby, you would also see that with Crystal Reports Enterprise, and if you are using Query Designer in Dashboard Designer, you would see 2 refresh error, and this issue is to be SAP has said that it would be addressed in the future release. Hierarchy selection screen does not always display the values for selection, and only the entire hierarchy can be displayed. This is what we faced while selecting hierarchies in the query panel for Webby. So even if you have, if it displays the query, it displays the hierarchy format, but you cannot select the individual nodes inside it. This we haven't found a solution for it yet. The other issues we faced were this is the most common question or issue we had before. What if when designing the BEX query, we want to use some of the objects which we are not sure of, and we leave it in the free characteristics? How would that affect your report? We found that though SAP says that it doesn't have an adverse effect, we found that uh, moving those objects to either rows or columns has a better performance, at least in Webby. Leverage SAP variables as part of BW query, variable type, single or multiple selection option, and interval needs to be planned beforehand. As I mentioned earlier, if you change after the report is developed, at least in Crystal reports, we had to point it to the same source again, and it does not always update when you click the database update option. Finally, coming to the conclusion, I would say compared to the previous releases, 4.0 is a definite improvement, but there are a lot of bugs and issues that needs to be sorted. One such issue is the authorization when it comes from a BEX query to a Crystal report. The other thing is cascading prompts. But still, there is a definite improvement when it comes to charts in the dashboard designer, connectivity, able to directly access BEX queries, and having information design tool is a definite advantage. You can have multiple multi-dimensional, multi-source universes. I would also say, since Service Pack 5 is already out, you can directly the best patch to go for now is Service Pack 5. Though 4.1, as it was termed earlier, is now Feature Pack 03, is bound to be out, I think, January. Still, it's in a ramp-up phase. But when it comes to upgrade, if you want to upgrade from previous releases to 4.0, go for the latest service pack. That would be my suggestion. And I could forward you these links upon request. And we will go for the questions now. Victoria?
Thank you for that great presentation, Karen. At this time, we'll now open it up to Q&A. First question, would you recommend to upgrade to BOBI 4.0 SP5 or wait for BOBI 4.1?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, 4.1, which was termed earlier, is now called, is still 4.0 Feature Pack 03. All the new features available are part of, all the new features would be available in Feature Pack 03. Also, some of the bug fixes are available in Feature Pack 03. But if you already have planned for Service Pack 5 or Service Pack 4, I would recommend to start with that. And since Feature Pack 03 is available as a separate installer as well as a patch, so you could, if you have a previous version, you can use the update installer and have the new features. Or if you would like to wait, you can wait until Feature Pack 03 is out and install that. But I would suggest installing the current version which you have right now, so that you would have your production ready, face the issues already, and see what is what. And once Feature Pack 03 is out, you can have those new features.
Thank you so much. We do have another question. Since LCM already scans for dependencies while transporting content, why can't we use LCM instead of Upgrade Management Tool?
Well, upgrade management tool, you could use upgrade management tool to upgrade your previous content, your Crystal reports or web, especially your Webby, uh, to your, I would say, upgrade management tool you can use to transport your inboxes or personal folders. But LCM, however, works only from same landscape. I mean, same system to same system. For example, you want to transport some content from dev, QA to production, you could use LCM for that. But upgrade management tool, you have to use it when you are upgrading your content from previous releases, XIR2, 3.1, 3.0 to 4.0. So LCM, however, does not support support from previous releases to current release.
Thank you very much for that, Karen. There are no further questions, and this will conclude our webinar session today. Thank you very much for everyone that attended.